Hi guys! So, welcome to Blender 3D for Horizon Worlds Creators Part 2, Materials, Textures, and UV Maps. So in this brief one today, it's going to be a quick one, not like last week. So we're going to go through briefly what are materials, textures, and UV maps. And then we're going to talk through how do we actually apply materials to objects. How do we sort of reuse those materials across multiple objects to make updating them simpler and to also save on the amount of materials that we might have to sort of offload to other platforms afterwards. And then how we also apply different materials and also textures to specific faces of those objects. So then in part 3, we'll be moving on to how to add the textures into the materials. And then the setting of those textures as what we refer to as the base color, which is sometimes also referred to as the albedo. And then really in part 4, we move on to UV mapping. And UV mapping is just quite simply how we apply the textures onto objects. So we do so quite directively through a process known as unwrapping, and then we can edit that afterwards to create a whole multitude of uses. So yeah, stay tuned. Just a quick intermission. If you enjoy this kind of content, if it's useful to you, if you want me to make more of it, please do consider hit the like button down there. Also, if you haven't already, please do consider subscribing. And this kind of feedback is really, really important to me. It lets me know people are making use of it. And you know, hey, if you want more of it, I'll make more of it. You just need to let me know. If there's anything I'm not doing right or more that you want to sort of see, specifically, drop something in the comments. Again, these kind of things help guide me to create the content that you guys actually want to see. But yeah, without any further ado, let's get on with the show. let's crack on. So part 1. We're on to the preamble. So on the preamble, what are materials? So materials are reusable units that you can apply to one or more objects. They determine how an object looks. They usually determine the shininess, glossiness, the roughness of things. Specular, it goes into the next level with the sort of the shininess. There's a whole load of sort of options you can configure in a material as to how it makes the object look. Coming from Horizon Worlds, you will have come across these material types before. You would have come across some default types like metallic or plastic or solid, or these things are completely all in here and then some. Blender has extensive amounts of ways you can configure materials, but the one thing to watch out for is that materials don't always translate in Blender like they do to game engines. So when you make your objects in Blender, don't be surprised if they don't look anything like it in the actual game engine that you're importing to as an end state. Blender is obviously an incredibly powerful tool. It is meant for everything from full-on rendering, like for example press a button and it'll generate all these sort of reflective surfaces, and it'll go off and take sort of like 4 minutes to create a single picture. Now when you are developing for a game engine, remember that your entire scene has to be running at roughly, let's say, average 69 frames a second in VR. That is a good baseline to go for. So yeah, you're not going to be using complicated materials, and even if you did, there's no telling that they'll actually transpire to look anything like that in the end application you're going for. So yeah, that's one thing out of the way. So materials, like I said, they can be assigned to one or more objects. Reuse is highly advised. You don't want sort of a scene that has 100 different materials, especially if all those materials are fundamentally the same thing. So you might create a material and call it, like for example, brushed steel. You might have another material and call it, for example, sand. That sort of thing, and then you can reapply those to many different sort of surfaces as you go. So that moves us neatly on to what are textures. Well, I mean, I'm not going to insult your intelligence. You already know what a texture is. You've seen them before. They're basically bitmaps that can be then applied onto 3D objects, which change what they refer to as a base color. Sometimes also they refer to that as an albedo. So if you come across that albedo term, that is the base color, and the base color we'll be referring to here will be texture based. It's based on a bitmap, which is an image. Obviously you can, bitmap is a file type as well. You can use PNGs, JPEGs, whatever you want, really. It's just, the options are limitless. So then we move on to UV mapping. So, and because the way the textures are applied to geometry, you might well find it like if you're dealing with a cone, it's a very different shape to a cuboid. And so the actual way that you apply that texture will have to be different to provide an eye-pleasing result. And you'll see what I mean when we actually move on to that section as well. That's really the preamble out of the way, to be honest, guys. So let's dive in. So we're going to go straight into Blender now, which I've got loaded behind me. This is the default new project, so we'll start right here. So you can see in our default scene, this is the default box with the light and the camera. And then if I go down to this little button just down here, this little pink sort of looks like an orb almost. If I click on that, that is actually the material properties section. So if I go in here, you can see that the box has a default material already, and it's called material. So yeah, with that material assigned, you can see I've got a whole load of things in here. The default at the moment, this is Blender 4.2, uses a principled BSDF surface, which provides you with a whole lot of options. But really, I mean, we're not going to worry about that. Base color is always a good one to look at. So if we have a look at picking that base color, we can then change the color on the object, which to see this reflected, actually, you can see at the moment, pay attention to this top right area up here. We need to be in this view, which I think is shaded, I believe, so we can actually see the output color there. It's the third option. So you've got wireframe, and then you've got this sort of like gray shaded, and then you've got this sort of color shaded option. So if I now change this base color, you can actually see it changes. Yeah, so you slide that around, you see the hue and saturation sliders going as I sort of click and drag around here. And then if I add a new object, so I'm going to press Shift and A to do that. And I'm going to create a new mesh. It's going to be a cube. Now, similarly, you'll remember on course 1 last week, that spawns it right in the middle of the previous object, because that is where the 3D cursor is. So if I press G, and then I press Y to move it along the Y-axis, so G and Y, I'm now sliding across here. So if I have a little look at the materials on this box, which I now have selected, hang on, let's just get this way and this way. You can actually see that on this new box, there's no material, right? So this new box is called Cube 001, and the original was just called Cube. You can see this in the outliner, and Cube has a material, but Cube 001 does not. Now I can create a new material, right? So if I hit this new button just here on the right, it creates a material 001, which is white. And again, if I change that color white to another color, you can see, there you go. So these two objects have two very different materials. But what I can also do is I can remove that material, okay? Just get rid of him. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to click this little box down. Oh no, sorry, I'm going to click this plus button here, add material slot. And you can see it adds a blank line there. And then what I do is this little button, browse material to be linked. If I click on this little combo, this little thing just here with a little ball on it, I can select, look, it comes up with my material and material 1 that we were looking at a second ago. But I want to choose material, the blue color. Okay, great. So that is now linked. That secondary object is now linked to the material we used on the first block. So that's really important, because if I now change the color of that material, you can see they both change. So that is basically reusing materials and applying them to the whole object. Now, what if I wanted to color a single face to be a different material? Well, you can do that. So again, we covered editing objects in the last tutorial, but if I select an object, press tab, and I'm going to switch to face mode, just this little button just up here. So if I click on this face here, and I add a new material slot, because I don't want to disrupt this material slot on the object, because that will, well, let's try it, either remove the whole, yeah, let's see, I actually can't remove the material slot in edit mode, it doesn't want me to do that, that's fine. But I click add material slot, so I add a new one, and then I can go in here and say, I'd select material 001, great, and I can actually apply that. So I click the assign button with this face selected, Well, let's now assign that color to just that one side. And likewise, if I come out of edit mode, so I press tab, I can make click on the other object, press tab, I can click on the top face, and I can add a material slot. I can go to browse material to be linked, and I click on material 1, which is the red one. You can kind of see the color down here, and then assign. So I've now assigned that material to the top face of that object and side face of that object. Now I can rename my materials because material and material 1 is quite confusing. So if I just double click on it a sec, left click red, okay, and then if I click on this one and I hit green, we can see that even though I've got this object selected, the fact that I'm editing the materials means if I go back to the original object, you can see that they've actually renamed as well because they're just linked. They're just linked. They don't contain the materials. The materials are linked to them. And likewise, if I select red here and I change the color to maybe blue, you can see it actually changes the color against anything that's been assigned that red material. So that's a very good trick when you're designing your objects or worlds, that when you link your materials to the same, link your objects to the same materials, just be a little bit thoughtful about that, how you're going to actually manage that. So anyway, that is part 2 done and dusted. We're making serious progress here, guys. So we've only got sections 3 and 4 now to get through. So adding textures to materials. So what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to pause the video at this point, okay? And I want you to find 3 images. Okay, just go on Google Images or something because we're not going to use these commercially. It's just for practice. I want you to find, and preferably in JPEG or PNG format, one image which looks like flattened concrete. Just type in like concrete textures into Google Images. Yeah. So your second picture that I want you to find, I want you to find a picture of sand texture. So just type in sand texture, search for that. And to the third one, I want you to use a picture of your face, or some celebrity's face or something, right? Just have a bit of fun, right? So we're going to run through assigning textures to materials next. So, okay, let's jump on. When you're ready, resume the video. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to carry on with these objects. No, we're not. We're going to start from scratch. So if I just hit A and I delete, okay, I'm going to create 3 objects, and there'll be 3 meshes, okay? So if I shift an A, and I'm going to do cube, and then I want to Control C and Control V, and I want to, that's copy and paste, I'm sorry, but copy and paste the object inside the other one, so I need to press G and Y to grab it along the Y-axis, and then I want to do the same again, Control copy, so Control C copy, Control V paste, and then I want a G for grab, and I want a Y for moving across the Y-axis. So we've got 3 objects, and they're just copies of each other, okay? So if I have a look at them, and I click on the Materials tab, let's see what we're playing with. So in these 3 objects, none of them have any materials assigned to them, okay? So what we do is against object number 1, we're going to call it concrete, okay? So I just click the plus button, and that's created a new image slot, and I'm calling it concrete. And then we move on to the next one. We're gonna click the plus button, we're gonna double click on the air. Oh, I'm sorry. We're gonna click the new button, and then we're gonna click sand, okay? And then we're gonna click on the final one, we're gonna click the new button, and we're gonna say face, or photo, or whatever, and call it face. We'll call it face. Alright, so our 3 boxes are here. Here. Oh yeah, so for the first one, I'm going to click it, and then obviously we've got concrete is come up here. So here's how we add a texture. When you see base color, do you remember I said that images or textures define the color of an object as a bitmap? That's really important, right? Because at the moment you're staring at a white box. So where you have base color, we're going to click on this little yellow dot just next to base color, right? So rather than selecting a color, we're going to click on that yellow dot. And when we do that, it pops up with a menu. And then I think it's something like the 5th option down in this texture section, where you go for image texture. Okay, so if we click on that, great, you can see it's probably changed the color of the shape there that you had selected. So if I now choose open, just below here. Okay, so I want you to navigate to where you stored your 3 textures that I told you to go grab. Okay, the 3 images. So the first one we're gonna load in I've got a concrete.jpg here. So if I just select it and click open, and you can see it's now put concrete actually on this object. Let's move it there. And as for the second one, repeat that process. So click on the second object, click on the yellow by base color, go to image texture, click on open just below where you clicked image texture, navigate back to that directory, and then load the sand texture. Great. So you've got a sort of I've got quite a crappy texture there, but you know, it's a low res one, fine. And then for the last one, I want you to click on that. Again, same thing. Base color, yellow spot, image texture, and then open. Okay, and now I want you to open up the photo that you got. So either a photo of yourself or some celebrity or whatever. Let me click open on that. So you can now see I've got my 3 textures loaded in. Okay, and that is the end of section 3. Now, hang on a second, because you're probably thinking, well, I don't mind the way that these have loaded in. These 2 aren't too bad, but actually, do you know what? No, this isn't how I wanted this to look at all. That's not what I wanted. What's happened there? And so we move into section 4, which is UV mapping. UV mapping is basically determining the horizontal and vertical coordinates of how a image or texture is mapped onto a 3D object. So what we'll do, and in fact what I'll do to really kick us off, is I'll create another object here already. So if I say Shift A and I do a cone shape, I'm gonna grab that and then the y-axis and drop him here. Okay, and I'm gonna apply the same texture here. So I've just gone into this drop down and said face. You can see on a cone again it's presented completely differently. That's hilarious. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll select an object. Okay, we'll go for the box first, I think. This one here. Okay, and say I want the image to be shown upright on all 4 sides, and the top and bottom can do whatever they want. I've got no problem with whatever they want to do, but I want the same image shown on all 4 sides, okay? None of this sort of wrapping around nonsense. So with that object selected, I'm going to go up to UV editing. So you see that I've got the full image over here, okay? And that's great. And I can sort of mouse wheel in here to zoom in and out, and again I can shift and right click. So very similar to the 3D view, guys. I can do all that sort of Evans shift and mouse wheel press down, sort of moves, so it pans around. Mouse wheel in and out, zooms in and out. You don't really need an orbit on a 2D, to be honest, because it is a 2D canvas, so there's no spinning around it. But that said, you've got another 3D view over here, which again you can orbit just by holding down mouse wheel. That is a thing. So with this object selected here, you can actually see when I've gone in here, if it's not allowing you to choose faces, by the way, make sure you're on face select mode. So to do that, you have to be at the top here. Face select mode is just here, and if you're not able to select them, then of course you're not able to see that, and you just need to press tab with your mouse over this window. So when you do that, you can actually see as you click the different faces, you can actually see all the faces changing on the left hand side as to where they are. If you shift click the faces, you can actually see all the faces appearing on the graphic on the left. And if you press A, you see all the faces for that object, because A is select all, so you get to see all the faces sort of unwrapped there. Now you can see, here's a trick. If I move this middle bar just over here for a split second, and I need to go up to here and click this viewport shading button just up here. So if I click that, I can now see the images. That's pretty important, actually. So if I just come in close here, so you can see that if I make sure I've got faces selected here, if I grab this and then I press G, very much like in the 3D view, if I press G and move it around, you can actually see it's changing. It's changing the orientation of the way that texture is mapped to all the sides of this cube, which is great, right? It's absolutely fantastic. Likewise, I can actually do that with individual points. If I go to UV select mode, here, so similar to your sort of vertex and edge and face, you've got these as well. So if I do that, I can sort of zoom in and change just an individual point. And if I click it and press G to grab, I can actually move that. So look, it actually stretches the image in weird and wacky ways. You can create some really interesting patterns with that. If you wanted to. Troops. And yeah, you can just sort of press G and then you can move more, do more sort of interesting things, but we're not here to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back into the 3D view. We're going to press A to make sure we've got all views selected, and under UV we've got an option to unwrap, so let's click that. So what's that done? It's done a whole load of nonsense over here. Like, that hasn't worked at all. Why hasn't it? I think if I just make sure I'm on face select mode and press A here, let's try that again. Unwrap. No, that's achieved the same result. So, there are no ideal ways to unwrap in Blender, okay, depending on the object you're working with. So in this example, I might choose to use a cube projection. So let's try that. So cube projection is quite simply created a single UV map here, which is actually this. And what's happened here, and this is absolutely okay in UV maps, all of these are overlapped with each other. So if I grab one, you can actually see it's over the top of the others. And grab another again. And you're kind of seeing something else in there as well that's an important feature. If I just go back here, I'm going to select all these UV maps now. Okay, so that is basically all 6 sides overlapped over the same image. So if I press A in this window, I can G and grab, and I can actually reposition that. And I'm going to just angle this so you can actually see it on at least 3 sides. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Likewise, and this is a bit like using the 3D port, if I press S, I can resize it. Look, so I can zoom in. Perfect. And also if I press S again and scale out, watch what happens. So the default behavior here is that when you scale out, you've just created tiling. So even though it way exceeds over the top of the actual image, the default behavior there is to actually just provide tiling. So it will do just that. So if I just move that back into place and come back, that's cube projection, guys. So what we can also do, another kind, if I go into this UV menu on the right hand side up here, I can say smart UV project. So if I click on that, and then there's a bunch of options here. We're not going to worry about that. If we hit the unwrap button, watch what happens. So that has just created another style of UV unwrapping. It's worth knowing about all these things, because when you're trying to auto UV unwrap, you'll find that these things will save you a lot of time, and then you can come back and fine tune specific parts of it if you need to. So always good. So the other and probably last thing that I'll show you in terms of generating them automatically is the projection from view. Now this one you probably won't use quite so commonly, but it's very interesting nevertheless. So if I look at an object, like 3 sides of it like this sort of elevation pointing diagonally downwards, if I say project from view, watch what happens. Look at that. Magic. So looking at the actual UV map, it's kind of drawn the picture as I look at it, or part of it, onto an actual projection. So as I sort of scroll around, it's sort of the illusion sort of falls apart a little bit because it's all stretched. So it's like when you see those fancy sort of advertising billboards on a football pitch. That's when it's done. It's made it look really good from one angle and one angle only. So if I just sort of go into here again and press tab and then, oh, hang on, I'm sorry. Tab and then A. I need to make sure I'm in the right section here. So there we go. Tab and A. Okay, and now you can actually see how that projection's happened. So over on this side, if I press A to select all objects here, and I G to centralize them, you can kind of see what's going on here. If I just pull that down to about here, and I press S to scale, it's kind of funny, isn't it? A little bit of sort of strangeness going on up here, but I love that. So that's useful for doing sort of artsy stuff, where you just want to project something as an image looks dead on, but onto an object from a certain perspective. So once we've done that, like, what I'll do is I'll move across to here, and you'll notice, and I can see this actually in this, I think it's called a data screen. Let me just check it a sec. Yes, this little blue icon here. If we go into data screen, you can actually see some UV maps. So this is a UV map here. And if I click on a different object like this, well, it's using the same material, which we called, I think, photo or face or something. Let's check. It's called face. It actually would use a completely different UV map. So just by pulling this over here, if I now press tab here, you can actually see the UV map for the cone is completely different. And I can basically select all, and I can grab that and move it around. And you notice it doesn't affect the box at all. That's very useful. If you want to use one image for a whole load of things, across a whole load of objects, you can absolutely do that. Similarly with the scale, you can constrain the scale on, for example, the x-axis would be horizontally. So you can sort of constrain it that way and move it that way, or scale, and on the Y, also possible. Let's have a go at doing some of the unwraps on the cones. If I just do the default unwrap, what happens? Okay, so it just plonks 2 over there. And if I say Smart UV Project, what happens? Yes, it's actually split it into like almost wafers, which is interesting. There's a lot of power behind this. It's quite specialist, so I'm not going to go into it on this course, but there is no one ideal way of doing this. So you actually got overlaps here using the cube projection. That's funny. Okay, so yeah, have a bit of fun with that. That's I'm going to end the course now because I think that's probably enough for today's session. But yeah, and let me know in the comments if that was useful or not. I'm always keen to hear feedback from you guys if there's things you'd like me to cover, or things that I'm not covering well enough or thoroughly enough. Then please do give me suggestions. Thank you. All right. Wait, end this yet. You can tell I'm tired. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.